look into the future, what do you see? I really need to know now, is there a place for me? If we're gonna survive, the dream must stay alive.
Authorities are appealing for calm throughout the evacuation process.
The Tribe, A New World by A.J. Penn. Chapter 1. The little trawler pitched up and down as the ocean waves carried it ever onwards. But to where? Amber wondered. The spray from the side of the boat drifting into her face. She was standing at the stern, staring out to the endless horizon of water surrounding them in all directions. She had always loved the sea. Her dad had taken her to the beach many times when she was a little girl, and she had an appreciation of the beauty of nature, a respect for its awesome power. Nature had a way of putting things in perspective. If this was any other occasion, Amber would have been soaking up the experience, enjoying every moment of it. The sound of the waves, the sun beaming down, bathing her in its warmth. The ocean, Amber reflected, wouldn't have changed for thousands of years. Despite the loss of the old world, the demise of the adults, this was one constant. And Amber took comfort from that, from the notion that there was one thing unchanging in this completely changed world. Amber's thoughts turned to the plight she and the others now found themselves in. She needed some time away from them, a moment alone to consider everything that had happened since they fled the city that had been their salvation. How many days had they been at sea? And where were they? Amber wondered. It must have been several weeks, with land now being a distant memory. Jack had tried to keep track of the number of days of their voyage, but as time passed, had given up. Their close confines had led to frayed nerves. 19 of them, cramped together in a little fishing trawler designed for a crew of 8. Amber knew the situation was dire, but she and Jay tried to keep everyone else's spirits up, which was easier said than done. A feeling of unease had taken over the vessel, of pointlessness, despair. Arguments erupted over the most petty issues. Everyone got on each other's nerves. With all the bickering, it hadn't been easy for Jack to concentrate, and despite his best efforts, he hadn't made any progress in trying to work out exactly where they might be. The original plan was to head for the outer islands in Zone 4, which they calculated would be about 1,000 miles from their previous home in the city. Jack had charted a guideline course. Even at 3 miles per hour then, they should have hopefully approached land within 10 to 15 days. But now their very survival was at stake. How ironic, to be on a fishing boat, but to have no fish, and hardly any food. The trawl had long ago been looted of nets and other equipment. Celine, Jack and Ram had tried to fashion together makeshift fishing lines, but with no bait, there hadn't been any bites so far. The only food they had was that stored on the boat by Zack, the trader who the boat belonged to, back in the city. Zack had been one of May's contacts, someone she could go to if she needed any kind of supplies. And it was thanks to Zack's boat that Amber and the others had a means to embark upon their voyage. The key to the food locker had been given to Amber, voted the leader, or the captain, of the vessel by the others, and she had been carefully rationing the small amounts of food and stored bottled water accumulated by Zack. But supplies were running dangerously low. Jack had tried to fix the fresh water issue by rigging together a rainwater collection device using a tatty plastic tarpaulin. but he had been unable to test the ability of his invention to collect water since it hadn't rained. Water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink. Amber recalled the line from Coleridge's famous poem about a doomed ship, shaking her head at how cruel fate could be, putting them in such a predicament. Their physical health was further endangered because the one toilet the boat had was blocked and no longer working. A terrible, noxious odour had begun to fill the air in the cramped cabins below. Most of the tribe had started to sleep on the outer decks. The issue of where they were going had caused many a fierce argument. For when they had first escaped, Ram wanted to head out to open sea to get away from the pandemic which they thought had infected the city. To sit it out. But Amber and the others knew that their only hope for survival was to try and settle in a new land. A couple of days into the voyage, it became apparent that Zack wouldn't be any help to them in practical terms of navigating. He had admitted bashfully that he knew nothing about the ocean or how to sail. It wasn't even his boat originally. As always, Zack had an ability of acquiring things. Items, even people. It was only by a miracle that there had been a small amount of fuel in the engines, that it hadn't been siphoned off by the locos or some other tribe in the city. Zack was a trader, not a sailor, and though the boat had been his home, he wouldn't be of any use in the mole rats finding their way. Ram gloated at this. Sure, his plan had been the better. If they had anchored a safe distance offshore, then they could have assessed matters, perhaps even explored the land along the coast. He had explained his worry that out in the ocean they could get caught in currents and end up lost. The others agreed with Amber that staying in the region was tantamount to committing suicide. Besides, she didn't quite trust Ram, and was never too sure exactly where he was coming from. Some in the party, especially Lex, blamed Ram in the first place. Had he not devised the computer program which had connected to Mega's chemical arsenal, then the Mole Rat tribe, along with the other tribes in the area, had a chance, however slim, of building a new world. Now they had no choice but to look for somewhere else to settle. As it became apparent that the little boat was lost, Ram had been all too eager to say, "I told you so," and had rubbed up the others, irritating them deliberately, and clearly hoped he could persuade them to return. Without a compass, no GPS, nobody able to navigate by the stars, though Jack was trying to teach himself how. They were directionless, drifting. The only question was, to where? Amber's mantra had been to keep heading north. Her resolution was that they use the sun as it rose each day as their compass. It's how Amber had learned to keep her bearings when she was in the eco tribe, living in the forest, gauging where east or west was to identify the time of day, reliant on the position of the sun. The helm still worked, so they were able to at least steer the boat. Jack had thought it wise to preserve what little fuel they had. Amber agreed. The power to the engines had been cut a few days out into their voyage. The others looked to her as a leader because so often she had the right idea at the right time. A solution for every problem that confronted them in this world of no adults. But now, Amber realized that she had no solution. She was as scared as everyone else. Here they were, stuck in the middle of nowhere, supplies and morale running out. But they had no choice, and she was determined that they would survive. Somehow. Somewhere. Amber, Jay asked, wrapping an arm lovingly around Amber's shoulder, having just emerged from the cabin to the outer deck, at the back of the trawler. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I just needed a bit of space. Whatever happens, we will get through all this. I promise. Jay encouraged her, giving her a tender kiss on the side of her face. But he sounded more convinced than he looked. The two of them stood hugging for a moment, staring out at the endless expanse of ocean all around, confronting it, as if they would never back down from any challenge it presented. At the bow of the boat, May patted Zack's back. He was leaning over the side of the trawler, coughing and spluttering, throwing up into the sea. Again. And again. He had been ill for days now. That's it. Get it all out, May encouraged, trying to help Zack, though being in such close proximity to someone vomiting was hugely unpleasant to her. Her face scrunched up in disgust at the awful smell and heaving sounds coming from Zack.